So hopefully you were able to think through this issue and actually solve this expand and collapsing problem. But if not, no worries, because in this video, I'm going to show you how I would tackle this problem and you can learn from that. So on the right hand side, I just have the working version and I have our version that is open on the left. And again, if you want this starting code, it's going to be linked down in the description below. So to get started, the first thing we're going to need is some form of JavaScript. So let's create a script tag here. And all we want to do is say script.js. We're going to create that file and we're going to defer this to load after our HTML. Let's create our script.js. Make sure we save this. And now inside of here, we can start writing our code. And just to make sure things are linked up, let's just console log hi, inspect our page. And there we go. We can see hi showing up. So everything is linked together. We can close out of this working version. We don't really need that open. So in the previous video, I mentioned that you want to create this thinking about how it would work even if new elements were added to the page after the fact that your JavaScript ran. And the reason I want you to think about that is because it's very common that you write some code where your page is static like this. And then later your code changes in that now new cards can be added to our page. So now title 5 might load into our page after our page is already loaded. It's being added dynamically by JavaScript. And if you don't write your first bit of JavaScript so that it dynamically handles this situation, you have to go back and rewrite all of your code. So it's very common to try to think a little bit ahead about what the future is going to look like. And in our case, it's very likely that we would want to dynamically add cards. That's just something that in this application we know may happen. So we're going to try to account for that. And generally, when you want to account for dynamic elements being added, you need to create event listeners on some type of parent element. And in our case, we're just going to use the document as our parent element for our event listener. So we want to listen to a click event. And normally, if we didn't care about this dynamic adding, we could just add the event listener directly on each one of our expand buttons. But since, like I said, we can dynamically add these eventually in the future, we're going to want to just add this on the document. That way we don't have to worry about whether it's dynamically added or not. Now here we can just say if e.target, which is the thing we click on, matches, and we go check here, we have a class expand button. So if it matches this class of expand button, then we want to do some code. And in our case, we're just going to check to see if it doesn't match, and then we're going to return. So now in here, this code is only going to run if we match that .expand button selector. So what exactly do we need to do? We know that when we click on this button, we want to expand or collapse our element. But how exactly are we going to go about doing that? Well, if we go to our index.html, we know that when we click on this button, we want to take this card body and add the class show to it. So we need to think about how we're going to get access to that card body. And if it helps you, you can write this down in pseudocode. For me, I'm just going to be talking through it. But if you need to write these things down to make it make sense to you, definitely write it down. Whatever makes the most sense for you, so that way you can see it as you're going along. But I'm just going to talk about exactly what I would do. So when I click this expand button, I want to access the card body. Well, to do that, they both share this parent card. So I can just go from this expand button, get to the closest card element, and then in the card element, I want to get the body, the card body that's inside of it, and add the class show or remove the class show depending on if it's there or not. So inside of script.js, all I need to do is first get the card. So we can say card is equal to e.target.closest.card, and that's the class here that we have on our card. So now we have access to the parent. Here we want to get the body, so we can say card body is equal to it's equal to card.query selector of card body. And the reason we're doing this is, again, we're trying to get to that card body. And the closest and quickest way we can do it is by going from this up to a parent that they share and then down to the body itself. That's a really common thing that you're going to see all the time inside of JavaScript. So now we have access to our card body. And what we need to do is we need to set the class either to show or to remove the class show, depending on if it's expanded or not. And you may be thinking, okay, well, I got card body, card body, class list, add, show, and you need to have some if statement to see if it's already showing or not. But luckily, you can actually just use this toggle method, which is automatically going to take care of all this for you. If show is already there, it's going to remove it. And if show is not there, it's going to add it for you. And this right here is going to do a lot of the work for us. If we just save this, click expand, you can now see it expanded. Click it again, and now it collapsed. Here we click it and it collapses, and now it expands. So it works for all of these different elements. But you'll notice one thing, our text here is not changing. Right now it should say collapse when something is expanded, but right now it still says expand. We need to change out our text. And to do that, we need to select this button here, which is just our e.target. So we can say e.target.inner text and we need to set that equal to something. And what we need to do is first check to see if it's already expanded. So we can say, if this is expanded, so we can say e.target.innerText is equal to expanded, then what we want to do is change it to collapsed. We just need to toggle this. Otherwise, we can keep it as expanded. Let me just expand my view so we can get it all on one line. And for this, I'm just using a ternary operator because I think it's pretty straightforward, but you could use if statements if you wanted. But all this ternary says is if our text is equal to expanded, then change it to collapsed. If it's not equal to expanded, then change it to expanded. And now, if we save this and click here, you'll see that this changes from expanded and collapsed. I'm sorry, this shouldn't say expanded. This should say expand and expand. There we go. So now this is properly changing. This one is properly changing, and this should say collapse instead of collapsed. There we go. So now we have expand, collapse, and collapse, expand, and all of these are working. And if you wanted, you could do this inside of an if. e.target.innerText is equal to expand. Then we're going to set e.target.innerText equal to collapse. Otherwise, we're going to set the e.target.innerText equal to expand. This does the exact same thing as our ternary operator, so it's really personal preference. As you can see, when we save this, both of these work. And that's really all there is to this expand collapse project. In the next video, we're going to be creating a Google Maps clone completely from scratch, so I can't wait to see you in that video.